Well, a warm welcome to all of you on this cold evening. Thank you for being here. My name is Kelly Conway. I am the Curator of American Glass here at the Corning Museum of Glass. And it is my pleasure to introduce you to our program this evening. Tonight, we will illuminate a history of the glass Christmas ornament, from its handmade origins in Germany in the 16th century to the mass production of ornaments in America in the 20th. We also hope to mesmerize you with a fascinating demonstration of traditional ornament making that persists today. And to begin, I'd like to introduce our talented and very merry panel of speakers. First, I'd like to present Eric Goldschmidt. Eric is the Properties of Glass Program Supervisor here at the museum. He has been working with glass primarily as a flameworker since 1996, studying and working with some of the world's most talented glass artists, scientists, curators, and historians. These experiences have informed not only his enlightening glass demonstrations experienced by hundreds of thousands of visitors a year here at the Corning Museum of Glass, but also his personal artistic practice. Tonight, Eric will share insights on his travels to Lauscha, Germany, and perform some of the traditional methods of ornament making for our delight. Next is Regan Brumagen. As the Reference and Visitor Services Librarian at the Regan Research Library, Regan answers reference questions, conducts oral histories, and provides expertise and leadership in the identification, assessment, and recommendation of emerging technologies and electronic resources that enhance and expand our library services and instruction. She is a member of the editorial board of the Glass Art Society newsletter and is currently serving as the North American delegate representing museums and special libraries in the International Consortium of Libraries, the OCLC. Regan has an MA in literature and an MS in information science from the University of Kentucky. She has lectured and authored numerous articles, including on Christmas ornaments, and really has too many to list this evening. But tonight, Regan will present a brief overview of Corning's history and importance in the history of Christmas ornaments, which I expect many of you will recognize immediately. And finally, joining the CMoG team tonight is our special guest, Marcie Davis. Marcie's business, Fire Lady Productions, documents the work of glass artists, and she leads tours to Lauscha, Germany every year for interested travelers. But Marcie's relationship to glass began long ago, during a trip with her parents at the tender age of 6 to Venice, Italy, where she encountered glass flameworkers in a small shop off St. Mark's Square. She has also been deeply influenced by glassmakers like Milan Townsend and Cordis Leroux. Leroux, a fifth-generation carnival flameworker, adopted Marcie as his final student and passed along a lifetime of trade secrets to her. Inspired by Leroux's life's work and determined not to let the generations of glassmaking history fade away, Marcie has developed an engaging curriculum of programs for school children. I was so impressed to learn that over 15 years, she has demonstrated for more than 150,000 students. Of particular appeal to Marcie is the tradition of flame-worked Christmas ornaments, and a visit to Lauscha, Germany in 2002 created a lasting impact on her. This evening, we have the privilege of hearing directly from Marcie about Lauscha's important role in shaping our holiday traditions. For many people, glass ornaments have become an intrinsic part of decorating our homes for Christmas time. Whoop. There we go. Twinkling, light-filled trees are made magical in the sparkling, reflective glass ornaments. For many of us, there are memories provoked each year when we carefully unwrap each ornament for display on the tree. A baby's first Christmas, or maybe you saved that cracked silver bell that was great-grandma's, or maybe even the first holiday ornament you made here at CMoG in the Make Your Own Glass studio. Glass ornaments are more than just decorative objects. They symbolize personal meaning in our lives, evoking a strong sense of nostalgia for the past. The advent of the glass Christmas ornament is closely associated with the growing popularity of Christmas trees in the home. While there are many origin stories about the appearance of the first Christmas tree, the tradition likely came to America via German immigrants. Small evergreen trees set on tabletops were decorated with candles, paper cones filled with nuts and sweets, ribbons, garlands, handmade objects, and eventually glass ornaments. Frequently in these images, we see families gathered around the tree in communal celebration, always idyllic and never fighting. This is one of the earliest depictions of a decorated tree in America, a sketch drawn by John Lewis Krimmel, a German immigrant to the Philadelphia area, dating around 1815. In 1920, a German story about Christmas trees was published in the Athenaeum, a Boston Unitarian magazine. And in 1836, the first printed image of American Christmas trees appeared in Boston as the frontispiece on the book titled The Stranger's Gift, written by another German immigrant named Hermann Bochum. There are many more accounts of Christmas trees in America, but it cannot be underestimated how much of an impact this image had on cementing the tradition of decorated trees in middle-class American homes. Here we see an image of Queen Victoria, Prince Albert, and their young family from the 1848 Illustrated London News. 2 years later, in 1850, it was reproduced in the widely circulated and extremely popular American publication, Godey's Lady's Book. However, notice that Queen Victoria's crown and Prince Albert's mustache are missing in Godey's version, an alteration no doubt made to appeal to American readers. Both Albert, who was born near Coburg, Germany, and Victoria wrote about their childhood Christmas celebrations, including tabletop evergreen trees decorated with candles and candies. Continuing their traditions, the young royal family generally spent Christmas at Windsor Castle, where they had several tables full of Christmas trees for each other and members of the royal household. As trend-setting magazines in America, such as Godey's Lady's Book and Harper's Weekly, encouraged family-centered celebrations and customs that glorified the home, Christmas trees and the holiday itself became an integral part of middle-class family life. By the mid-1860s, glass ornaments from Germany were beginning to be imported in full force by American retailers and further heightened the appeal of Christmas-time shopping. Ornaments were also used as attractive, shimmering decoration to draw in shoppers during the holiday season. L. Frank Baum, perhaps best known to us as the author of The Wizard of Oz, was a merchandise specialist, a fairly new trade in the late 19th century that arose with the establishment of large department stores in America. He noted that, quote, Christmas raised the bar of expectation for displays that set new standards for consumer attraction. The recent holiday displays have thoroughly demonstrated the progress of the art of window trimming. Every village and hamlet in the land has some sort of window display of unusual merit to attract the public and further the sale of Christmas wares. The expansive space created by uninterrupted plate glass windows beckoned to be decked out with an array of holiday decorations. And this tradition continues today, say in a wall of vintage shiny bright ornaments used to decorate the windows of a women's clothing store, Anthropologie. Or how many of you remember fondly passing animated holiday windows at Christmas time? Or perhaps have recently traveled to the extravaganza that is New York City during Christmas time to see their windows, or read the article in the local paper, The Leader, this week about the holiday windows on Market Street. So ornaments have become not just decoration for the home and for our retail spaces, but they're also these tangible reminders of moments, big and small, personal and communal, in each of our lives. So as we introduce you to a brief history of the making of glass ornaments this evening, I encourage you to reflect on your own favorites, Share them with your family, and if you want, you can share them on social media with us with the hashtag #GlassOrnament, as we've been doing all week. So please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Marcie Davis.
Thank you so much. Have you got this? Okay, can you hear me all the way in the back? Okay, good. Now, I am so happy to be here tonight, and I don't need that. Okay, let's see. Well, no, come on. There we go. I first visited Lauscha for the first time. It was after the Glass Art Society conference in 2002, and I'd heard that there was a small group, and they were going to go there and drive there from Amsterdam. And even though I hardly knew these people, but I had wanted to go to Lauscha so badly for so long that I had the nerve to ask if I could tag along, and they said sure. And then the video producer and me asked, could I bring my cameras? They asked some of the local artists, who said yes. And so I embarked on a trip that would change my life forever. I've traveled all over the world, but when I left Lauscha after that first visit, I wept. I was so transformed and inspired that actually I put together an annual tour to bring others with me every summer to reproduce that experience, because it was just so unbelievable. It just changed me and my life forever. Now, Lauscha is this small mountain town. It's nestled in the heart of Thüringen. It's home to 3,700 residents, hundreds of flame workers, and the world's only glass princess. This tiny town has contributed tremendous techniques to the world. They've got glass eyes, the montage technique, and they're all well known, but Lauscha is best known as the birthplace of the glass Christmas ornament. As in many places, glassblowers often lived in poverty, and in 1860, a local glassblower had no money to decorate his Christmas tree with the expensive imported fruits that were typically used. He had no funds, he had no fruit, but he had glass. So he took some tubing and he blew glass fruits to decorate his tree. And from these humble beginnings, a worldwide industry was born. Glassmaking has a history of at least 700 years in this region, and the earliest glass workers were nuns and monks. The area now known as Lauscha was great for glassmaking because the forest provided wood for the fuel, and the Lauscha River was the source for the sand. Christoph Müller and Hans Greiner requested permission from the Duke of Coburg to erect a glass factory here. The first factory, called the Mother Glass Works, was built in 1595. Lauscha incorporated 2 years later. And several factories, or glass huts, were built over the centuries on the site that you see here, which is still called the Hüttenplatz, or Hut Place. In the 1700s, numerous glassworkers began to work out of their homes because the factory was working to capacity. By the 1800s, glassworkers began making children's toys, marbles, barometers, and beads. Father-son family traditions would span centuries, and they began to emerge starting around this time. For eons, the residents of Lauscha were mostly direct descendants of Christoph Müller and Hans Greiner. This made it increasingly impossible to deliver the mail, and because there were only 2 last names, so so the families were all encouraged to take on, a hyphenated second surname just so they could deliver the mail. The factory in our photo is known as the Sepp Hut, and it was established by the Greiners in 1853. It burnt down in 1894, and in 1895 it was rebuilt out of brick instead of wood. The earliest blown ornaments were made shiny inside using lead or mercury. As you might imagine, with families working, eating, and living in the same small space, contamination and heavy metal poisoning were common health hazards. Some of the earliest hand-blown ornaments were attached to one another to form a chain, like you see here. The use of lead and mercury was eventually replaced. In 1870, Gustav Engelhardt, a local pharmacist, invented the first silver-based mirroring solution using silver nitrate and sugar water. Here's an early mold-blown ornament. Now, one of my mentors, Chester Dolphin, he was a USO juggler and contortionist, and he was stationed in Germany in the 60s. He was a flame worker, and he became friends with local flame workers, and he acquired quite a collection of antique Christmas ornament molds. And when he died, I inherited these molds. They were fun to use, but I had no idea how to do the hand silvering. It was very complicated. And without the silvering, the ornaments were very unimpressive. And Corning's own Raykow research librarian, Virginia Wright, she used to fax me reams of paper about old European silvering recipes. They were very complicated and full of explanations that warned you that if you didn't follow the directions explicitly, the solutions might explode or cause blindness. I did master the technique, and I made a few silvered ornaments before Hurricane Andrew destroyed my home in 1992. Everything was gone, but Chester's ornament molds and my first silvered ornaments were the only things that survived. Now, Lauscha is not far from the town of Sonneberg, which was famous all over the world for having their wonderful handmade toys. F.W. Woolworth was really fond of these toys, and he imported quite a bit of product to the U.S. And while he was over there, he also discovered Lauscha's ornaments. He began importing large quantities, giving rise to some well-appreciated prosperity in Lauscha. Here's the Weschenfelder family, showing how making Christmas ornaments was truly a family affair. Everyone got into the act. Okay, now, who knows what this is? There would be one of these hanging off the end of every work table in every household. Does anybody want to guess what this might be? It is. It's a bird cage. And it's also a primitive carbon monoxide alarm. It's a canary cage because canaries are very sensitive in changes in the atmosphere. Canaries were used in Lauscha's home workshops to alert the families when the carbon monoxide levels got too high. If your canary keeled over dead, it was time to open the window. So here's dear old Dad and his boys blowing Christmas ornaments. Under the table is the bellows, which was operated by foot to force feed air into the torch flame. And the bellows were brought to Lauscha in 1820, although they had been used by glassblowers in other places for over 100 years. The division of labor was strictly according to gender. Painting and packing were the domain of the women of the family for generations. Painting is an art, and my ornament maker friend, Michael Haberland, complains that these days it's hard to find really good painters. On Fridays, he takes his week's work of silvered ornaments and he drops them off at several painters' homes to be decorated. In the days before UPS, getting those ornaments to market fell literally upon the backs of the wives and daughters of Lauscha. While individual ornaments were light, boxes and boxes of them were not so easy to carry. The ornaments needed to be walked to Sonneberg once a week to deliver to wholesalers. That's 18 kilometers or 11 miles each way. Now, while what you're looking at here is a cobblestone road, that road ends, and the rest of the journey was through narrow dirt forest trails. And Lauscha is a mountain town, and the journey included plenty of steep hills, which must have been loads of fun during their 6 months of snow. Demand for Lauscha ornaments was high for decades, but During 2 world wars, German ornaments were obviously hard to come by. And after World War II, Lauscha was located in the east under communist rule and slipped behind the Iron Curtain. Christmas ornament production was now under the auspices of the state-run factories, and America had learned to find other sources to decorate their holiday trees. It's interesting to note that the reason that Lauscha was behind the Iron Curtain and in East Germany was because the Russians had suspected that there might be uranium in the Thuringen Wald, the local forest. And so when they were delineating the border, they made an actual little jog like this so that they could keep this area for the uranium. But in fact, no uranium was ever found. This is one of my absolutely favorite decorating styles. It's done with ice lac or ice lacquer. And as you can see, when it dries, it makes this rich, crinkly effect that I think is totally gorgeous. And everything decorated with ice lac, it just looks really high-end and expensive. And plus, it's really fun. You know, you paint with it, and it's just like a regular paint, but then when it dries, you get this cool effect. Now, the spun glass for Christmas ornaments began to be used in 1870 when Friedrich Reiner Guido adapted a technique from Murano. And spun glass was primarily used for the tails and feathers of Christmas birds. Aha, the proverbial pickle. Who has heard about the tradition of hiding the pickle on the Christmas tree? According to Americans, the first to find the pickle gets a special gift. It's a German tradition, right? But the funny thing is, when I told this to Michael, he'd never heard of it. And so he asked around to his other ornament maker friends, and they'd never heard of it either. So apparently it's a U.S. legend. Now this is Farbglashütte Lauscha, the color glass factory, as it exists today. Now they manufacture rods and tubes for local glassblowers' use, plus finished gift items and ornaments. It's about my favorite place on the planet, definitely. Now after many incarnations, nationalization, privatization, this factory is the one that has evolved from that original Sepp hut established by the Greiners in 1853. I couldn't resist including this. I wish I could say that no animals were harmed in the production of this photo, but that's not true. I was a bit taken aback when I first saw a rabbit's foot on a workbench. It looked like a dead mouse. Michael told me he uses it to clean the dust off his glass tubing, and he demonstrated it works really well. And here's Michael Haberland hard at work. You can see ornaments in various stages of completion. You've got some are silvered, some are lacquered, some are decorated, you know, some are just blown. Now his story is really interesting. He was a young man, and he'd recently been hired at a local factory when the wall came down in '89. The state-owned factories obviously closed, throwing many people out of work. Now he was still living at home, and he and his mother were discussing his future. What to do? Why not look for your grandfather's old ornament molds, his mother suggested, and lo and behold, they found them in the attic. And so began what became a lifelong family business. Now, growing up in Lauscha during communist GDR times was not easy for Michael. He used to hike through the forest where he could glimpse Coburg Castle, which was in the west, and it was just a few kilometers away. But why couldn't he go there? It was so frustrating to be trapped in the east, yearning to go west, where he would be allowed to listen to his favorite band, the Beatles. Western music was absolutely illegal during communist times. Now, we in the West, we look at democracy and the free market system as the envy of the world, and in so many ways they are. Laotians are thrilled to be able to travel to the West and to run their own businesses. One of my first visits there, I was in a girlfriend's kitchen, and she had tears in her eyes, and she actually grabbed my forearm and she said, "Who would have ever thought that we would live to be able to have Americans in our homes?" It was just amazing. But, you know, the new free market system is not without difficulties. After decades of communist thought, it's sometimes difficult to compete when entrepreneurial skills are not part of your DNA. Each workshop has its own specialties, but the regional style is similar from shop to shop. They don't really know how to compete in a world market, and Asia makes it almost impossible to survive. So when you ask a local if things are better now than when they were under communist rule, you'll get a mixed response. Yes, they are happier now. They are free. But during GDR times, the state-run factory would drop off glass once a month to each flameworker at their home studio. The quantity given was somewhat over the quota of work to be produced in order to allow for breakage. Now, if you were good, you wouldn't have much breakage. If you were fast, you could finish your work by maybe lunchtime, mid-afternoon, and give yourself plenty of time to create your own custom work. So a thriving black market developed. Glassblowers were relatively well off. In lean GDR times, when basic supplies were often hard to find, glass was a great commodity for trade. Several people have told me the same story, that if your car went kaput and you took it to the mechanic, the typical response was, "Sorry, we don't have that part in stock." If your response was, "But I've got glass," you were likely to hear, "Wait just a minute, I think we might have something in the back." So during GDR times, Lauscha glassblowers had money. They also had something else, privilege, which is unusual in a communist society. But just like the Russians would parade their gymnasts around the world as a show of excellence, Lauscha's glassblowers were the jewels in the crown of the East German government. They were sometimes even allowed to demonstrate outside the Iron Curtain. One day, Michael had a client who visited and brought her mother, and so they enjoyed the usual demo and watching and learning about ornaments, and they purchased some. The mother said she might be back. It turned out that the mother was Petra DURST-BENNING, a best-selling German author. She was fascinated by Michael's ornaments and every other reality of Lauscha life. She once told Michael, she said, "You know what? I think I might write a book about you and this town." And he was like, "Oh yeah, right." Well, no, she didn't write a book. She wrote 3. As a matter of fact, she has a best-selling trilogy of historical novels about glass, ornaments, and life in Lauscha. And this trilogy has recently been translated into English, and you can get it on Amazon. It's incredible, and it's not expensive either. Anyway, she publicly thanks Michael Haberland in her books for all of the help he gave her and the research and all of the details about glass. I think this series has got to be the best hope Lauscha has of having an awareness in the Western world, which maybe will keep them alive over there. And guess what? The TV movie of the first book, Die Glasbläserin, airs tomorrow on German TV. We are so excited. It's in German, but okay. And Michael, he's busy. He's got lots of ornaments to pack and ship before Christmas, or he would have been with us today, which is his birthday. He does grumble that there are only 2 Christmas ornament mold makers left in Lauscha. They're cranky old men, and they only work now and again when their children ask them for money. There's only one man left to spin the glass birds for the tails, to spin the glass for the birds' tails. And, more importantly, the Chinese knockoffs really threaten Lauscha's survival. But still, he has hope for the future. His customers are mainly in Europe. He so yearns to expand to the U.S. market. So if any of you have any suggestions, please let us know. Oh, and Michael, happy birthday.
An adjustment of the mic. Thanks, Marcie. That was lovely. So now that you're all steeped in Lauscha traditions, I'm going to introduce some of our local connections to the story. And that begins with the king of the five and dimes, Frank Woolworth. In 1880, a German toy salesman convinced Woolworth to buy a case of ornaments for his Lancaster, Pennsylvania store. Woolworth didn't think Americans would buy them because they didn't do anything. They weren't functional. But he bought a case on the condition that he could give everything that wasn't sold back to the salesman. But they sold, and they sold fast, so he bought more. And then he bought more. And then he even visited Lauscha to set up his own supply chain. And by 1900, Woolworth was importing 200,000 ornaments a year, and sales had reached $25 million, which in 1900 is pretty astounding. This is Woolworth's syndicates, his sales store owners. So Woolworth sold the ornaments, but he also, as Kelly mentioned, used them to create that festive feeling that drew people into his store. And in 1892, he loved to give advice, which I'm not sure his store owners necessarily appreciated, but he wrote to his store owners, "Give your stores a holiday appearance, hang up Christmas ornaments, perhaps have a tree in the window." And Woolworth wasn't necessarily interested in promoting the holiday spirit. He was all about the bottom line, because he continued on, "When the store is crowded, don't allow any boys and girls in the store at all, unless they are with parents, as most of them come in on purpose to steal." So he was quite a character. By the 1930s, 95% of all the ornaments on American trees were from Germany. And Europe was already facing war. Here you see Max Eckhart, who was a German ornament importer. He was worried. He's the owner of Shiny Bright, an ornament company. He's worried that his supplies from Germany are going to be cut off. And in order to prevent this from happening, Eckhart approached a company called Corning Glass Works, asked them to consider using its technology to produce ornaments domestically. So what technology are we talking about? As we all know who live here in Corning, probably, the bulb, the light bulb. In 1926, Corning had developed an amazing machine called the ribbon machine that by the 1930s could produce 800 bulbs per minute. Modern ribbon machines can turn them out even faster, making smaller bulbs at a rate of 2,000 bulbs a minute. Corning's ribbon machine, located in Wellsboro, Pennsylvania, was patented by William Woods and David Gray, and it was revolutionary. Here's their patent drawing, and if you've ever looked at a patent drawing, you see most drawings have 1 or 2 pages. This one has 18 pages. It was quite a machine. It is quite a machine. A handful of these were enough to create a world supply of incandescent light bulbs. And this summer, the last ribbon machine operating in Wellsboro closed down. But before it did, our digital team filmed all of its operations. And they have created a clip just for you showing the ribbon machine as it makes bulbs in real time and also slowed down so you can actually see what's happening. Because if you're looking at it in real time, it's so fast you can't even see what's happening. So I am going to play that. Wood's brilliant idea was to have conveyor belts that operated on 3 different levels, one above the other. The middle level would have a stream of molten glass which traveled along between rollers. And the glass would roll over metal plates. Each one would have a hole in the plate. The hot glass would drop through the hole, and as it did, a second conveyor above that would bring a plunger down over each gob of glass. In the plunger was a tube which blew compressed air into the glass. And then below the metal plates and the hanging gob of glass was another conveyor which had split molds which would push upward and clamp around the gob of glass. The mold would then open back up and the formed bulb would be broken off the ribbon and then shot off into the annealing oven. And it really is kind of a violent action. Someone described in an article that it was like a shower, a cascade of bulbs that flowing off of it. The leftover ribbon would then feed back into the melting tank to be reused. And the entire operation is just so fast, your eye can barely see it happening. And you can see that they have periodically slowed it down, and there are the bulbs cascading off. Amazingly, few of them would get broken, and they're going into the annealing oven. And you see the ribbon of glass flowing down, going back into the melting tank. So we have this amazing machine. I mean, what if instead of making bulbs, then you could produce ornaments, which are somewhat the same size and shape, right? So starting in 1937, Corning Glass Works began experimenting with this idea. And in 1939, they produced the first set of ornaments for sale. They distributed 235,000 ornaments to Woolworths alone, and 1 million for sale across the country in 2 sizes of ball ornaments. And they all sold. By 1940, they produced 40 million. And by 1942, Corning had shipped 70 million ornaments in various sizes and shapes. So it escalated very quickly. And by the way, thank you to the digital team for that really amazing video. Because trust me, you cannot see it. These are molds that were on the ribbon machine creating Christmas tree ornaments. Although Corning started with round ornaments, they quickly added what people in the trade like to refer to as fancies. These are pine cones, lanterns, maybe. There we go. And then other more traditional shapes were found and hand-blown ornaments were added. And according to Otto Hilbert of Corning Glass Works, some of the earliest designs were even done by Frederick Carter and Paul Gardner. Corning produced ornaments like these for sale directly to retailers that were made and decorated all in the Wellsboro factory and sold under the Corning name. But most of the ornaments that they produced were shipped out undecorated and then given to ornament companies such as Max Eckhart's Shiny Bright or Kobe Glass, who would supply the decoration and market them under their own brands. And I don't know if you can see Uncle Sam shaking hands with Santa Claus on the box of Shiny Bright, but it is a brilliant packaging idea. The pastel colors on the ornament there are some that you see a lot apparently during World War II when shortages of metal were common. This was another Shiny Bright ornament. And another, and notice this one with the hanger. Also, the ornament tops during World War II were often replaced with cardboard or paper. Following World War II, Corning continued to produce ornaments. And this cover of Corning Glass Works Gaffer newsletter from 1946 shows some of the colors of the bulbs that were made at that time. Looks like a sea or a garden. By 1959, Corning was making 100 million ornaments a year. Over 50% of them were plain, and the most popular color, according to the gaffer for that year, was red. So we're all dressed in red here, with blue a close second. This is a Shiny Bright ornament. Shiny Bright remained the main recipient of the Wellsboro plant's production, but other firms like Kobe Glass and George Frank & Sons were also buyers. This is a Kobe Glass ornament box. And here you see that some of the workers in the Kobe Glass on the left, and on the right is George Frank & Sons. On the left, you can see the Kobe workers are applying silver using a machine that has the lovely name of the Jiggler. and it would swish silvering solution inside the bulbs. And then on the right, the George Frankenson's worker is removing the neck from a bulb after it's been painted. Corning also supplied ornaments to a man named Harry Heim, who purchased an entire town in Maryland in 1948 to start an ornament company in an old factory there. He renamed the town Santaheim. He wanted to call it Santaheim, Maryland, decorated it for the holidays, set up a carnival around Christmas, and provided free train rides from D.C. for people to visit the village. He really, really tried to create a very festive and lucrative industry there, but it was apparently a lot more festive than it was lucrative. And I don't think Mr. Heim understood the complexities of the tax system, and within 3 years, Santaheim was gone. All that was left were some lonely reindeer and empty rail cars. And the town returned to its previous name of, I love this, Savage, Maryland. Like Santaheim, companies come and go, as do stores like Woolworth's. But the ornaments keep hanging around to fascinate us. All of this information and a lot more I got from the Regan Library and the Henry Ford Museum, and we would love it if you would like to come in, learn more about Christmas ornaments in your collection, or share information that you have with us, which is where we learn a lot about things on our own. We'd be delighted to talk to you. And I'm going to leave you with this picture. Kelly and I decided that we would put this up to make Eric feel at home, because he has probably had a lot of these little faces peering at him in his flame working booth many, many times. Thank you very much.
All right, good evening. So that is indeed a very familiar sort of look for me. If you see enough flame working demos, that's sort of my view with the kids' faces pressed up against the glass. So, I first met German artist, Thuringian artist, Andre Gutgesell in 2012. The summer of 2012, he came to our studio to teach. And as we got talking, he invited me over to go learn something about the traditions and for him to share the culture of these Thuringian glassblowers with me. So I went rushing over, spring of 2013, went over to learn as much as I could about their glass culture, their traditions, their techniques. And so I had the chance to visit a number of private studios. I had a chance to visit a glass eye factory, a couple of different ornament makers, and also the glass school in Lauscha. So the glass school there was established in 1923 to continue to build on the traditions of the ornament industry there. So it's actually a vocational school for high school age kids. There's a 3-year program. And this is a permanent display that they have at the school. I was there in May, and still they have Christmas decorations set up there because it is such a powerful part of their tradition. So as I walked into the first year students' classroom, sure enough, they were learning the mold blowing process for making the traditional ornaments there. The second year students work on some more advanced hollow forms, start getting into some hollow sculpture, a little bit of solid sculpture as well. And third year students get into fairly complex blown forms, some things that I certainly struggle with even after 20 years of flame working. And unfortunately, they see a rate of students sort of dropping out of the program. This was the entire third year class. They had started with 12 students and whittled down to 3 by the end of it. So they're not seeing a huge influx of kids coming up through the ranks there. Now, in addition to learning the flame working end of things, the students learn some kiln casting, they learn some glass painting. They don't have a hot shop at the school. There's not much of a focus on furnace-style glass blowing in Lauscha. Most of the tradition revolves around flame working. Now, in addition to those skills, the students learn all the aspects of the ornament tradition, which involves making molds, which is what we see in the oven here. They learn the silvering process. You've heard both Marcie and Regan spoke a little bit about the silvering. They learn glass painting as well, and come out with some pretty amazing work for just being 3 years into glass making. So we want to show you a little bit of those steps of the process. And I had my first chance to work on the mold blowing at Michael Haberland's studio, who Marcie was discussing. It's a lot harder than it looks. You think about, oh, you just stick it in the mold, you blow, it takes on the shape of the mold. I almost broke Michael's mold when I first tried it. I didn't get enough of the glass hot enough, and you need to sort of lay the glass across the mold. He happens to have a pneumatic mold press, so as soon as you hit a button, it's coming down. And I had a little bit of glass that wasn't quite molten, and the mold caught on it. I thought I was going to destroy this amazing mold. Fortunately, I got through that and have gotten quite a bit better with the process. So when I got back here, we built a mold press, and this is just spring-loaded, so a little foot pedal under the bench, and it holds a 2-part mold. And so we'll start to dive in and show you how this stuff works. So the glass that the Lauschians use is a pretty soft soda lime glass. It's important to use a glass that's soft enough that when you blow in, it's going to fill the mold. What I typically work with and what you see us demonstrating with most of the time in our flameworking demos is borosilicate glass. It's a lot stiffer, and it doesn't fill the mold very well. So, step one, need to get the right flame set for this glass. Now, oftentimes when you watch us doing flameworking demos, you're going to see a flame that's about like that. That's way too hot for this glass. The Lauschians, most of them working with that soda lime glass, rather than working on a torch that runs on natural gas or propane mixed with oxygen, they use natural gas just mixed with some forced air. So it's a much cooler flame. So when we work with the natural gas and oxygen, we want to tune this down a little bit. So a little bit of a different look to the flame that I need for this than what you'll typically see us working with. And we'll get our foot pedal arranged here. All right, so got the hollow tubing. I want to start to warm this. And another thing, when I first worked with Michael, I'm used to, anytime I put a piece of soda lime glass in the flame, it tends to shock and crack. So I was very slow about approaching the flame with the tube, and he started sort of chuckling and told me, you know, this is a very different flame than what you're used to. You can put the glass right in there. So that was a bit of a difference than what I was used to. All right, so we're going to soften this up. And once it's soft enough, I'll lay it across the mold, close the mold, and then blow in firmly, almost like you'd blow to blow out birthday candles when you want to make sure they all go out. So we'll make our move to the mold now that this is soft enough. And there we go. It takes on the pattern of the inside of the mold, as you would expect. Get this off of here. So that is the mold blowing end of things. Now, one other thing I should point out about the mold that I found curious, I kept trying to ask what they make their molds from. What material is it? A lot of molds are made from plaster and silica. I figured it probably was something to that effect. And people kept dancing around the question every time I asked it over there. Nobody seemed to want to give an answer. And I actually I sent an email. Continue to struggle to get an answer. I sent an email to the instructor, or the first-year instructor at the glass school. Like, can you tell me what's in this stuff? It seems like maybe plaster, silica, clay. And I get this answer back, oh, sure, I'll tell you what's in it. Secret clay. Not too helpful. So yeah, I have a sense it's very similar to the material we use for the doors of our reheating furnaces here. So we're going to continue to experiment with that, try to nail it down, and not necessarily blow up the secret of the Lauschans, but we'd like to know. All right, so that's the mold blowing process. The next step we want to show you is the silvering, what really makes all these ornaments pop. So I'm going to enlist the help of our science educator, Catherine Wazorek, to give a little bit of an explanation as to what's going on chemically here.
All right, thanks, Eric. It looks like Eric and I are the only ones who forgot to wear red and black today. So thanks for bearing with us as we are clashing with everyone else. All right, so we measured out some chemicals earlier this morning, and we're hoping that everything goes according to plan. So I'll wait till he's got kind of everything situated.
Safety is no accident. All right.
So Eric's putting on some gloves here because some of the chemicals that we're using can react with the light, and also you don't really want to get them on your skin. So it looks like he is undoing the ornament. So we put one chemical in the ornament already. This is that sugar solution. This is dextrose. And that will react with the second chemical that Eric is taking out of this aluminum foil. So we put it in aluminum foil to shield it from the light because it's a mixture of silver nitrate and ammonium nitrate. And the silver will react with the light and it will turn brown and it will not really work out so good. So does that look pretty clear and colorless, Eric, to you?
It does indeed.
Okay. So hopefully that will be fine. The silver in the silver nitrate, it kind of grabs onto these ammonia molecules in the ammonium nitrate, and they form this complex of silver and ammonia atoms together. So you can see he's pouring that into the ornament right now, and not much is going to happen just yet because this reaction really likes to proceed under basic conditions. So now we need to add a strong base, which is in that graduated cylinder. This is sodium hydroxide, also known as lye. You can see it turned really dark just now. So that means the silver is starting to react with the dextrose. And he's going to be our jiggler today. We don't have one of those fancy machines, but he's got an arm. So you can see that solution's really dark. The silver that was dissolved in that silver nitrate solution is starting to precipitate out. It's starting to kind of undissolve, and it's getting deposited right onto the inner surface of that glass ornament. And it happens pretty quickly, but that layer is very, very thin. It's only just a couple of atoms thick, so it could very easily be kind of washed off or brushed off if we kind of rinse it too vigorously. So how do you think? That looks pretty good.
I think so.
Yeah. So are you going to dump out into the, yeah. So he's going to just dump out what's left into the waste container, probably rinse it out a couple of times. There's a lot of stuff that didn't stick, which is fine. So, yeah. So he's just rinsing it with distilled water, and he's going to do that kind of carefully so that the finish doesn't come off. And then after this, we're going to go and neutralize all those chemicals and take care of everything so that it's OSHA compliant.
All righty.
All right.
Excellent.
Good job, Eric.
Thank you. All right. So we've got our silvering done, and Marcie's going to jump in and show us the lacquering and some of the glitter applications. So we left the lacquer closed because it does not smell very pleasant.
It smells awful.
Yeah.
Is this on?
Yep.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Now, in a typical Christbaumschmuck, which is Christmas ornament stuff maker's studio, they have really large, containers, big buckets, and tons of them, and there's stains all over, where all of the lacquers have dripped. And anyway, it's a heady experience insofar as if you're in there a few minutes, like when we go to visit Michael, and I'm in there because I like to go, I bring everybody in, and we have our, everybody gets to make some ornaments, and we have this workshop, and then everybody shops, and he does the whole demo like you see here, except it's different there. He has a different kind of a, I guess it just must be a different formula, because he's got a great big, like a pasta pot, really huge, filled with hot water. And so when he's doing the shaking and everything, he's dipping in and out of hot water, and that's what helps to cause the reaction there. But anyway, it's just, you can't breathe in there, you start to get really dizzy very quickly. Maybe it helps you to buy more, I don't know. Anyway, so you start with a silvered ornament, and what they typically do, they have a whole rack. I mean, it's like this, but, times 5 or 6. There's hundreds of ornaments from the day before, and they're up high. They're hanging up on a rafter to drain. And then they take them down, and they just go. And there's a specific move that he does, which I don't want to get it all over, but they dip it into the can like this, and then they bring it out like this, and then they start, and as it drips, because, if you don't turn it like this, then what happens is you're going to get like a dot at the bottom, where it's just going to kind of collect and be a thick part. And then as it gets thinner and thinner and most of it drips off, they go really fast like this. He can do them really quick. Not as fast as making those light bulbs, but he does them pretty quickly. And so all you do is you lacquer it like this, then you put it up, invert it over the nail like that to dry. And then, the day after that, they'll take the ornament and, well, first they'll paint them, so there's another step, but we don't have a glass painter here. So they'll take these and all the Santas and that sort of thing, painstakingly painting. And I want to say this, that when you go into one of the painter shops, because he took me on his little Friday afternoon delivery of the silvered ornaments to the painters' houses, and they have these tiny little painting areas. I mean, it's like smaller than your basic mud room or laundry room, okay? And there's no ventilation, and they're painting, and I just wonder what is going on, because it's very, it's a real slow process, and there's no ventilation. And there's a couple of things I just want to tell you really quick about some of the traditions in Lauscha, which is rarely do you see an annealer. People who do flameworking in America are very involved in, annealing schedules to make sure that everything doesn't crack. But over there, they've got huge, complex vessels and things animals that are thick and thin and large, and they don't anneal anything and it never cracks. They understand the heat, they understand the glass, and it all works perfectly. The other thing I wanted to say is, so after the painting, then they do this, sometimes you think, oh, it looks so arty and so high-end, and then they kind of put glitter on it. But it is very much in demand to put the glitter on it. Now, I will say 2 things. One, when they do the glitter, their glitter does not look like our glitter. I asked Eric, I'm like, you got a coffee grinder you don't ever want to use again? Because their glitter's really, really fine, like grains of sand. And when they use the glue, they have like a needle that comes out from here. So the glue is very, very thin, and the glitter is very, very fine. So, right now what we're going to try to do is sort of like a bull in a china shop, because we got big fat glue and big fat glitter. But it gives you the idea, which is just, you take the glue and kind of just, it's really quite a lot of fun, actually. But you can just put in dots and all sorts of things and little squiggles. And so that's what they do. Sometimes, like I have one that Michael wrote my name on it, and that was a lot of fun, too. But it's just very basic. Glue and glitter, just like, when you're in kindergarten and you like to play on the construction paper with the glue and put the glitter, it's exactly the same thing, except that when you're done, and they have these huge amounts of glitter and kind of like, gosh, you know the disposable like turkey pans that you have at Thanksgiving? Well, that's kind of what they glitter over. They just do things like this in all different colors. And then you can add a little bit more if you want. And so it's just a very small, informal process. But that's how it's done. And that's pretty much it. And then the extra, of course, falls out. And then you tap it gently to dry like that. Put it up here. And that's how that works. And now...
All right. Maybe we'll stick this a little further up here. And
Okay.
we want to show you guys the glass spinning as well. Marcie has a couple of these spinning wheels from Lauscha, which I had never used one before yesterday. It's a bit of a new experience. Takes a little accuracy of temperature and timing. And again, as has been mentioned a couple of times tonight, these little threads are what are used for like the tails of birds, like what we've got on the other bench there. And it's a pretty neat little process. We've been enjoying playing with it.
We have had a lot of fun. Sometimes you have to do it a couple of times to get it to be just right.
Yeah. We'll get it just right.
And this wheel has got to be, we figure, about 50 years old.
All right.
Ready?
Sure.
So what Eric's going to do is get a small gather of glass with the torch, and then we have, in this wheel, there's a small copper wire with a loop. And so he's going to get this little gather and put it on the copper wire, squish it down so that it adheres and, they're together. And at that point, he'll pull back and put the rod back in the flame, and I'll start to spin the wheel this way. And when all goes well, we gently feed the molten glass to the wheel and keep turning. And if we don't have it exactly right, sometimes it snaps and then we do it again.
You ready?
I'm ready.
All righty, me too.
Okay.
So we'll tack that on the wire.
Yep. And then, there you go.
And spin.
All right.
So it's really a matter of finding the right spot in the flame here. Trying to keep it soft on the end, but if I let the flame get a little too far off of my left edge, it melts it apart.
Right.
So it takes a little bit of temperature control, finding the right spot in the flame. Marcie's got just the right speed
there we
going
go.
there.
All right. That's
So we'll
good.
melt that apart.
Okay.
And the threads are so thin, they cool immediately. So you
Yeah.
can see Marcie can just jump right in there, cut them with a fingernail, right?
I'm cutting them with my thumbnail. And of course, the joy, of course, this is, I guess, a fiber optic town, but for a lot of people who don't know about this sort of thing, the joy of spun glass being so flexible like that, it's really, I never tire of it. I think it's just amazing the way we can turn the glass like this. We won't even go into the phone conversations and all of the different wonderful technology that this symbolizes.
These folks know it pretty well.
Yes, I know they do. But so here's another application for your fiber optics, and that is to put it on the tails of little glass Christmas birds. Now, Michael sent us, where's that mold? Here it is. Mm-hmm. Michael sent us one of his special Lauscha molds, and they are lubricated with graphite for the most part. Sometimes, did you know that they sometimes would use molasses as well?
I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
for
sometimes
ornament
they would.
molds.
So
Yeah.
this is the two-part mold that was used to make some of these cute little birds. And remember I told you it is not very impressive before it's silvered? Exhibit A, not so exciting when it's not silvered. And then, of course, once it's silvered, it looks so beautiful. Sometimes I wonder why they even put the lacquer on them, because I love silver just by itself. And we are not going to do this, but what you would do, there's two things. One, you would snap off this, you would snap it off, and then you would glue lengths of the, of the tail feather glass. And also, you can't probably see it, but at the very bottom, there's two little dimples going in, and that's where they would attach the little springy legs and the clip. And so that's what that is for. And
Great
here
done
is
there.
a finished bird right here. And so,
Excellent. Well, I think that is about what we want to show you. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Thank you very much, Kelly and Regan. And Marcie, thank you so much for coming to town to share with us.
and thank you for
And
inviting me.
if you do have any questions, feel free to come down here. We'll be happy to answer whatever we can. And have a great holiday season, everybody. Thank you.